This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi said Parshas Lecha. We have a very interesting question regarding the Milah of Avraham Avinu, and that is, we know Eikev Asher Shama Avraham B'Koili Avraham Avinu was Mekayim Kol Torah Kula before it was given. Avraham Avinu put on tefillin every day. Avraham Avinu wore tzitzis. Avraham Avinu ate gefilte fish. He was Mekayim all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Yeah? So the shaila is, so why didn't Avraham Avinu do Milah before it was given? If he did all the mitzvahs. So why didn't he do Milah? So why did he wear tefillin then? Right? So that's the question. So they say over the name of the Brisker Rav, you ready for this? You can't just do a Milah. In order to do a Milah, you have to have the halachic status of an RL. An RL. And if you don't have a mitzvah of Milah, you're not an RL. An RL is not someone who has a foreskin. An RL is someone who the Torah obligates to do a Milah. But if there's no mitzvah of Milah, you're not an RL. You're not an RL. In other words, there's a question. How did Yaakov Avinu marry two sisters? The answer is, if there's no Kiddushin yet, he's not marrying two sisters. In order to do Milah, you have to have the chalois. You have to have the chalois of an RL. If God has not commanded you to do Milah, you're not an RL yet. An RL is... Yeah, he did. Every single time he was an RL, he did a Milah. But guess what? He was never an RL. Why? Because God never commanded him. In other words, you can't just do a Milah. You have to be eligible to do a Milah. How are you eligible? To have the halachic status. So before the Torah was given, there's no such thing as a halachic status of...
commanded to do anything.
Right, but for other mitzvahs, you don't have to have a halachic status to do it. But for Milah, in order to do the Milah, you have to have the halachic status of being an RL. Now, according to this, we understand something very interesting. In Parak Yud Zayin, Pasuk Gimel, the Pasuk says that Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, Ani kel shaka yisach lefanav v'yeh tamim, and I'm giving you bris. What was Avraham's reaction? I have to go call the caterer. No, that's not what he said. He said, Vayipol Avram al. He fell on his face. Says Rashi, why did Avram fall on his face? Mimoira Shechina. He was afraid of the Shechina. Sha'ad Shalayma, because before he had the Milah, lo haya by kayach lamoid. He could not stand when God came to him. Oh, really? So could you tell me why in the beginning of Lech Lecha it says Vayomer Hashem Avram Lech Lecha me'artzecha miladcha, and what does Avraham do? He says, sure, whatever you say, God. And then when Hashem comes to Avraham and he says something else, Avraham, what? So if Rashi is saying that before Avraham had the Milah, he couldn't stand in front of God because of Ma'ir HaShechina, so why is this the first time that it says Vayipol Avram al Panav? Every time Hashem had spoken to Avraham heretofore, he should have fallen on his face. So says the Chacham, he did. But the Torah chose to tell it to us over here. Says the Meshech Chacham, no. This is where the Torah tells us this is the first time he fell on his face. So what's the pshat? The answer is because Avraham, in the beginning of the Parsha, he wasn't lacking a Milah. You know why he wasn't lacking a Milah?
Because he wasn't told.
Because he's not an RL. You know why he's not an RL? Because God never commanded him to do the Milah. So if God comes to him, Avraham could say, Shalom Aleichem, how you doing, Hashem? This is the only window of opportunity in the history of Avraham's life where Hashem tells him, do the Milah, whereupon he attains the halachic status of an RL, but he didn't do the Milah yet. So he falls on his face. It's the only time. After he had the Milah, he had the Milah. Before Hashem told him about Milah, he's not an RL. It's only this small, tiny little window of opportunity where Hashem comes to Avraham, he says, Avraham, do the Milah, whereupon Avraham attains the status of an RL. And that's why some Rishonim learn that, let's say somebody's brother died, Machmas Milah, right? Misha Meis Achim Machmas Milah.
He's potter.
He's potter. Okay, right? One or two. Does he have a status of an RL? Maybe not. Why? Because if he's not Mitzuva and Mila, he might not be an Aral. So it comes out very meduyuk according to this. Comes out beautiful. Why Dafka at this interval, Hashem tells Avraham, speaks to Avraham, and Avraham falls on his face. Why not before? Like the Brisker Rav is saying. Because until Hashem commanded him, he didn't devolve on him the status, the halachic status of being an Aral, and therefore it's only here that Avraham fell on his face. And with this, Rabbi Sai, we will wish you Agun Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.